so sorry.
That's okay. Mike's not here yet either, so.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
You can leave between us. I don't.
The May 4th, 2022 meeting of the Ames Planning and Zoning Commission shall come to order. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an independent advisory body of the City of Ames City Council. The Planning and Zoning Commission members are volunteers of the community and not part of the city administration. The Planning and Zoning Commission is supported by staff from the city's planning division. The commission is responsible for recommendations on matters involving subdivisions, annexations, master plans, and major site development plans, amendments to the zoning ordinance, and comprehensive plan amendments. We make our recommendations based on city codes, the facts presented, and input from the public. As an advisory commission, we welcome all comments regarding the proposed item. Please direct your input to the commission. We would ask that you only speak once and try to limit your time to maybe 5 minutes or so. And if somebody else has already spoken about the same item or the same exact point, you might not talk or whatever. Whatever. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask the comments be focused on new information not previously presented. You may speak only once on an agenda item. I guess I should have just kept reading. If you wish to speak, please fill out the speaker information card and present it to the recording secretary. Eileen over here. We ask that you come to the microphone and speak so that all the comments may be recorded over here at the lectern. The order of the proceeding for each item on the agenda will be as follows. The city staff will present the staff report regarding the agenda item. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the city staff, and then the applicant will be invited to make a statement regarding the request. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. Members of the audience will be invited to come forward to offer comments and questions. Once public comment is closed, city staff and the applicant will have an opportunity for concluding remarks. The commission will discuss the application based on all presentations and any comments given, come to a recommendation for the city council. The discussion may include further questions of city staff and the applicant for clarification. And with that, we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is introduction of the commission members.
Okay, on the top.
John Emery.
Mike Clayton.
Julie Winter.
Okay, I would like to have the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
There is a motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Approval of the minutes of April 20th, 2022. Would entertain a motion to approval or discuss them.
I move to approve the minutes of April 20th, 2022.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Okay, next is the public forum. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak on any subject that's not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Is there anybody that would like to speak to the commission about something not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the item number 6. Public hearing for the rezoning of 3005 to 3125 Grove Avenue and 3209 Duff Avenue.
Good evening. I'll be presenting. This is a request for rezoning parcels on the west side of Grove Avenue from RH residential high density to RM residential medium density. So before I get too much into it, I do want to mention that city staff, we are the applicant in this case. The city council initiated this rezoning request on January 11th. It was in response to a request from the Northwood Overland Heights Neighborhood Association, who had previously submitted a letter to the city council asking for consideration of changing the zoning from RH residential high density to RM residential medium density. So in the staff report, it does go through what the differences are between those two zoning categories. I'll highlight some of those a little bit later in the presentation. But the idea was that the RM zoning is less intensive. It would be more compatible with the neighborhood uses. As you can see from the location map and aerial, the area to the right or to the east is single-family residential, an existing neighborhood that was developed quite some time ago. And to the left or to the west is the Walmart. You have, this is Grand Avenue here. This is Northwood that wraps around. This is Duff Avenue here. And this is Grove Avenue. So the request is for these 8 properties on the west side of Grove Avenue. Current zoning, as I mentioned, is RH. The request is for those as identified. The RH zoning has been in place for about 20 years. Prior to that time, it did have a medium density zoning, but at the time the land use, the LUPP plan was adopted. It had identified this area as potential for higher density and for redevelopment, most likely because of its proximity to the mall and to Walmart and some of this higher intensity development on this side. Something interesting about the property, however, is that because of Grand Avenue being a state highway, these properties are not able to be accessed from Grand Avenue because they have an alternative frontage. So they would have to be, if all of these properties are currently developed, none of them are vacant, but if they were to be redeveloped, the access to the properties would have to be internal, either from Northwood, Duff, or Grove. They would not be allowed access onto Grand. So that is one reason it's impactful. This is the proposed zoning map. Oops, that is a little bit fuzzy. There. So if it were zoned to RM, there isn't anything RM in this area, but it would be a good transition from RL. Both RM and RH are considered appropriate transition zones to a higher intensity commercial use, but RM would be more reflective of the existing character that's there now. The Ames Plan 2040 identifies this land as what is called a redirection area. And what that really means is it was identified because of some of the recent activity in the area. There's been some interest in redevelopment. And so because of that, and then also just its proximity to higher intensity commercial and so forth, it was identified as a potential area for redevelopment. Redirection just means that it needs to be studied more. It doesn't mean that it has to be more intense or less intense. It just is identifying it as an area that might need a little bit more reflection. And there's some policies related to redirection areas that are included in the addendum. So that going back to the area, I'm going to put this back up here. Whoops. So within this area, there's a mix of uses. There's 4 properties in the center that are still single-family residential. Under RH, those are non-compatible uses. meaning that if the land was totally vacant today and had no use on it, the use that would be able to develop under RH would not be a single-family residence. Flanking the area, going out from the single-family properties more in the center, you have duplexes, and then you have apartments. So the apartments are usually, or in this area, they're kind of clustered at the end caps to the block, in part because of access, being able to be from another road and so forth. I suppose that's more of an opinion than a fact. But anyway, so the existing area or block is a mix of uses, all residential in character. None of these have a commercial use. And the one thing that was most interesting to the neighborhood association with the idea of taking the zoning to RM was the idea that that would protect these properties from being redeveloped into a commercial use. Under RH, you're only allowed a commercial use as a mixed-use property. What that means is a commercial use on the base level with residential above it, and a limitation on the square footage of the building. This property to the north, which isn't reflective in the picture of what it is currently being built as, but this property here, it no longer has this configuration. These structures were demolished, and it is being redeveloped as a mixed-use property, and it does also have the RH zoning. This site is a little bit different in that it is a corner, so it has street frontage on 2 sides, but not on 3 sides. The properties that flank this block have frontage on 3 sides, which makes it very difficult to develop and to meet our front yard and parking requirements. So it would not be possible simply to take the development that occurred here and flip it and have it to occur here, because that would put the parking along Grove, which we would consider one of the primary frontages. So it would have some challenges for any of, a challenge for any of these properties, quite frankly, is the size of the parcels. I believe this parcel here was a consolidation of 2 parcels, which allowed for its redevelopment at some point in the past. But just the size of the parcel in and of itself without consolidating it with another parcel does limit its development. It limits its redevelopment potential. And the entire area is only 3.2 acres. So we're not talking about a lot of acreage, even with all of the properties. So we looked at kind of what was currently in place. What's the current number of units? What's the potential for units under the different zoning scenarios? So we calculated that currently there are 25 dwelling units on these 8 parcels as they exist today. And as I mentioned, it's a blend of single-family homes, duplexes, and apartment buildings. And the apartment buildings are 8 units or less. So not a particularly intensive apartment building. If theoretically, if under the RH zoning, there's potential for 88 units. And under the RM zoning, there's potential theoretical density of 56 units. So technically, there's opportunity for increased density. However, those numbers don't reflect the reality of dealing with actual site conditions that would limit what can go on the site because of building setbacks, parking requirements, and so forth. So the small size and number of lots severely limits any redevelopment potential as it is today. Notable differences between RH and RM zoning districts are outlined on page 2. So the one major difference is that you can have commercial mixed-use development in RH up to 5,000 square feet for staff approval, or if it's over 5,000 square feet, it would require city council approval. The height allowance is much higher for RH, and RM is much smaller. The height of the buildings that exist today are only 3 stories. So just because you're allowed a higher height doesn't mean you're going to be able to build it, because you also would have to accommodate more parking spaces. The density allowance is up to 38.56 dwelling units per acre in RH, and RM would only allow 22.31 dwelling units per acre. But you can see that even when it was initially developed under a medium density zoning, it didn't come close to maximizing what it could have been allowed because of site constraints and probably the market demand and so forth as well. So City Council, when they directed staff to initiate the rezoning process, one of their primary directives was that staff invite dialogue with the property owners, because when this first came through, the request was from the neighborhood association, not from the property owners of these properties. So in reality, these property owners may not have even known that there was any discussion about their property. And so as a follow-up to the council's directive, staff sent a letter to the 8 property owners on January 19th, inviting dialogue about the potential change. And we received 3 responses. 2 were favorable and 1 was against changing the zoning. That was followed up by a special neighborhood meeting. Postcard invitations were sent to 32 property owners, so it was expanded. It included the 8 parcels, as well as any properties within 200 feet of that area, as well as the neighborhood association representatives. The meeting was attended by 12 people representing 8 properties. So about 25% of the people that were invited attended. The consensus of those attending was in support of the rezoning to RM, with 1 property owner who represented 3125 Grove, which is this property on the north here, who was against the rezoning. That property owner stated that he had purchased the property specifically with the intention of redeveloping it into mixed use. And staff did receive a letter from him, and I believe he is here tonight. And the letter from him is in your packet as attachment B. You have as attachment A, the original letter sent from the neighborhood association, and then attachment B is the letter from the property owner at 3125 Grove Avenue. And prior to this meeting, in accordance with the notification requirements of the zoning ordinance, a public notice was mailed to all property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. And in addition, a noticing sign was placed on one of the corners. There's 7 findings of fact that staff has outlined on pages 6 through 7. I won't go through all of those, but I am happy to answer any questions. I do want to talk a little bit more about the redirection area that's outlined in the addendum and how that works. And so before I do so, one of staff's major concerns with any redevelopment, especially in this situation, where it's one side of a street and on the other side of the street are single-family homes, that the prevailing concern is that street frontage along Grove Avenue and the treatment of that street frontage. We spent a little bit of time looking at the character of the area and how it's defined, and the fact that it's a very established area, generally one-story homes along tree-lined streets. The homes in the neighborhood appear to be generally owner-occupied, so what you would consider a stable neighborhood and not one that appears to be transitioning in any way. Buildings line the street with similar setbacks, and parking for more intensive uses in this area, the parking is generally to the side of the building or to the rear of the building as directed by the zoning ordinance today. The future land use map, as I mentioned, identifies it as a redirection area. And this is from the Ames Plan 2040 that talks about the characteristics, the goals, the actions for a redirection area. And there's several different statements. There's a guiding principle that says make smooth transitions in scale and intensity of use from pre-existing contexts to higher intensity development. Support higher density redevelopment only in planned or targeted land use redirection areas. Use prevailing density as the guide for redevelopment, but allow for building variations to meet and fill objectives. In another place, it talks about increasing the efficiency and quality of Ames urban environment, and infill development may change the type and intensity of land use and introduce new building forms, with the idea of having more efficiency and higher density. So there's a little bit of 2 different approaches as to what is a redirection area, how it might proceed. But it should be noted that the redirection area designation has no direct effect on the current zoning of the property, as the designation is intended for study purposes. So the primary question is really whether the existing higher infill density potential is the higher priority compared to a change for a more moderate redevelopment option, with the neighborhood's primary goal to limit commercial uses. So it is the recommendation of city staff that the commission support the change of rezoning to RM. And one thing I also would mention is that, as we mentioned, this is a fairly stable area. There's been some redevelopment interest in some of the properties. And there was some interest in these 2 properties at one point, and that did not move forward. And as I mentioned, this property here is currently being redeveloped. But as far as the neighborhood, it appears very stable, and it might be that no redevelopment occurs. There's not any nothing is vacant at this point. So we're just looking to the future as to what makes the most sense, and to support that direction. We believe that the request for rezoning is consistent with Ames Plan 2040 future land use map. And therefore, the Planning and Housing Department supports alternative 1 to recommend to the City Council to approve the request to rezone 3.2 acres located on the west side of Grove Avenue from RH residential high density to RM residential medium density. And I'm happy to answer questions.
You mentioned that it's been RH for about 20 years or so. What was it before that?
It was R3, which was a medium density
Okay.
zoning category. And so most of what is there now, mostly, was built under that zoning category.
Are there any more questions?
Yes, just gotta be able to
Okay.
do it. Swallowed wrong. Do you know what the boundaries is to the neighborhood association?
No, but there are
There's
lots of
representatives.
people here that can answer that question.
Okay, then on property 3125, the setbacks. Say that there, what are the setbacks on the Grove Avenue side? Well, I guess-
Under RH or RM?
The current one.
25 on both streets, Northwood and Grove.
And then on with RM, it'd be,
It gets a little different. Front yards other than RH are defined by where you're addressed and where your driveway is. So if it stays on Northwood, that would be a front, and then you would get a street side, which is 15. If a driveway was on Grove, you'd have the front be 25 and a street side on Northwood. So RH is unique in our code that it has 2 fronts and no rear. Every other zone has a front and a rear and
it'd
side.
still have the rear with Grand, wouldn't it?
Not a rear setback.
What's the building that's there right now?
What?
What's the building that's there right now? Is that a home or is that
Apartment building.
apartment? Okay. Oh, yeah.
And
That's on 3125.
Yeah, I'm 3125. Sorry, yes. 3125.
Has that person pulled a building permit at all for their construction, or is this just,
I mean, they submitted their letter. No, they have no plans on file with the city.
And then I have a question. Maybe you can answer this, Kelly. Is any of the alternatives, are we able to put in a sunset clause to go from RH to RM?
You have to explain that a little bit more.
If we decide that to leave it RH for that property and decide that if nothing's done within, say, a year, year and a half, maybe 2, that it automatically reverts to RM?
I would say probably not. I think you'd have to go back through the rezoning process. I'm not familiar with like a contingent rezoning if you don't
Sunset.
take advantage of what you do. Well, it's not I wouldn't be comfortable with that option. I think you'd have to redo the zoning process if you left it out.
Okay. Just exploring what possible options are.
I guess I do have one quick question about the access points. So the main issue is that for those properties, they have to be accessed via Grove Avenue for the majority of them. And that northernmost parcel, 3125, could they have their access point at either Northwood or Grove? For
Yes.
parking and such?
Different question. Parking is not driveways.
Driveways could be either.
So I would typically, a corner lot can choose their driveway location subject to our traffic engineering staff's agreement with the location that's proposed. So parking, however, is on site and it can never be in the front yard, which is defined as any space between a building and the street, whether it's your addressed front yard or not.
So if that parcel were redeveloped to a mixed use, parking would have to go on the south side of the parcel, which would mean that they would have to turn onto Grove Ave no matter what.
I wouldn't say that. I don't know that we can go through all the site
Okay.
planning permutations. If in essence, what you said, the parking would have to be to the south or to the west on the property. It cannot be on the east between a building and any Grove Avenue street.
Thank you.
And are there any restrictions, view restrictions from Grand for parking?
It's not a front yard under the code, so it could have parking. We have landscape standards that go along with parking lots. Does that end? There's no view standards, so I don't know how to say
I
it.
just know on other properties on the other side of the street, we always have, we don't want certain things being viewable from Grand.
So they'd be required to have a parking lot landscape buffer along Grand, but the parking lot would still be behind landscaping. It'd be
Yeah, that answers the question.
okay.
Okay. Nothing else from me.
Yeah, I don't think
Any
they-
other questions? Okay. Okay, at this time then, I guess we would open up the public comment period. If there's anybody from the audience that would like to speak, come on up.
Bob Long, 3124 Grove, directly across from 3125.
Okay.
Part of the neighborhood association. Somebody asked what the boundaries are. Exclude Walmart and you got it. Oh, you're looking at this one.
I'm looking there.
Yeah, I'm looking at
Yeah,
that.
it's the
thing.
same.
Exclude Walmart, and that's the neighborhood association. So Northwood continues around. So from Duff to Northwood on the north, Grand to what Northwood becomes as it comes out. I'm in favor of option one, or whatever you called it, alternative one. On a personal note, this probably affects me a little bit more than it will some of the other people here, because I live on Grove.
Mhm.
And the only thing I would bring up is that I've lived there it's almost 40 years now. That's my home. When I bought it, it was zoned R3. I moved there. It was a neighborhood. There were kids, people rode their bikes, walked up and down the street, blah, 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 all that other. But anyway, in the 97 LUPP, whatever the numbers are, when it got changed to RH, and then someone made a comment that, well, it's been 20 years and you haven't done anything. Well, no one knew. Most of us homeowners, when's the last time you looked to see what the property across the street from you was zoned? It's not something that comes up. I asked staff about it. I said, we didn't get it. Back in 97, I didn't get a postcard or a letter inviting me to a meeting to voice comment. I didn't see a sign in the front yard saying we're going to rezone this to a higher level. So be it. So 20 years have passed, and Eloise, right?
Yes.
Eloise mentioned Sherwin-Williams made a pitch to develop 3125 and what's the one south of it?
3115.
I listened to that city council meeting intently because it was right across the street from me. And what I got out of that was, oh, mixed use commercial is available. Now, I don't want to put words in Kelly's mouth, but Kelly, during that meeting, you assured council that, first of all, mixed use properties aren't popping up in Ames. It's not happening. That made me feel a little bit better. Then you also told them, well, the sites, and you've kind of mentioned this, the sites are so small that it makes it really difficult to do a mixed use with parking and all the other setback regulations and this. And your third comment was, it's going to remain like this for a long, long time. So I really didn't do anything back then. That was in 19, I think, was it 19?
I don't.
It was 18 or 19.
It was about 3 years ago.
About 3 years ago. Well, a year later, COVID hit, Mary Kay blew up. And 6 months later, there's a bulldozer knocking their place down. That's when I got personally involved. And I've kind of pushed my neighborhood into this a little bit. So if you're going to point fingers, you can point them at me. But the neighborhood's online with me because of, we don't need commercial. That is a neighborhood. It's not a commercial. In theory, somebody with a lot of money could come in, buy that whole strip and make a strip mall with apartments on top. And we would end up having to live with it. And I just personally don't want to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Marie Meyer, and I live at 607 River Oak Drive. If you go from 309 and head east, that lot in the corner is me. So I am not as directly affected by this, but Bob made a point that is part of the reason this matters to me too. It is a neighborhood. I'm one of the newcomers in the neighborhood. I've been in my house for 22 years. While you might say, yeah, we didn't quibble for 20 years. The other question is, though, it was zoned RH 20 years ago, and no one, until this came along, wanted to develop anything. And I am quite sure that the owner of 3125, whether he plans to develop this year, next year, or in 5 years, he knows not to let this go by because this could affect his future plans. So yes, of course this came up for him. And of course, if he intended it for development, he needs to say something. The thing I find of interest is if I were going to buy a property I wanted to develop, I'm going to check out the neighborhood. We have backed into expanding property. We own 5 houses. One is in Clear Lake, 4 are in Clear Lake, and one is here in Ames. Before we buy a property to fix it up, and we're focusing on family-friendly homes, we check out the neighborhood. Is this a good neighborhood? Is this where we want tenants to live? What kind of place is this? It doesn't take much investigating to see that this is a neighborhood. Even in the strip from 3125, 3209, it is all residents. It's a solid neighborhood. Part of the quality in life in Ames is the wonderful city administration, the businesses, the robustness of events going on, and the neighborhoods. In fact, Ames believes so much in neighborhoods, they have created categories for neighborhood associations and contacts so that they can communicate directly to these neighborhoods. So I urge you to go with option 1. It's been said it's consistent with the city plan, it's consistent with current use, and it will continue to foster what has been a thriving neighborhood for the future. Thank you.
Did anybody have questions for her? Did anybody have questions for her? Did anybody have questions?
Hello, my name is Usman. I am, I guess, one of the odd one out. I I own that 3125 Grove Avenue, and I purchased this property with an intention to have an office. I currently rent an office on Main Street, and I understand the neighbors, and I understand where they don't want that much traffic on there. So the entrance for that property is on Northwood. So if I do, when I make an office space there, the traffic's not gonna go on to Grove. So it's not really gonna, it's not gonna add that much traffic to what it is. And, I talked to an architect, and I could probably keep the existing building and then do second floor housing and the main floor as commercial. And I need about 2,500 to 3,000 square feet for the office. Nothing else on there. So I request that, if you guys can maybe look at option 2, that would allow me to do what I'm looking to do. And then also I'm not building a department store or something that's, that you're going to have a lot of traffic coming in. It's an office space. You don't get that much traffic there. So that's all my request is. Okay.
I have a quick question for you.
Yep.
So do you have any of these plans already set in motion? I know you said you spoke to an
I did talk to
architect.
an architect.
Okay.
And then he came in, looked at it. He said, yes, we can keep an existing building and then build on the second floor, the apartments, and then keep the main floor for commercial, for office space.
Do you
Yes,
have
ma'am.
like a timeline of when you were thinking? You said maybe a few
Probably
years.
within a year.
Oh, within a
Yeah, within
Okay.
a year and a half max is what I'm
Okay.
looking at. Because currently I am paying rent.
Uh-huh.
I've been renting for so long that I'd rather have my own office space.
Okay. Thank you.
So how many stories are you planning?
The 2-story, 3 maybe, but that's pretty maximum that would be. So it's going to depend on whether how many units I can have on there is what it would be. But the main floor is probably 2,500 to 3,000 square feet is what I'm looking at for the office space.
Do you know what the footprint is right now, currently?
Uh,
Square footage.
The square footage,
Like, is that making it much bigger than it is currently?
no,
The
it's not
building.
going to make it bigger than what it currently is. So it's basically would be the current footprint, just a second story on top of it.
So it's one story right now.
It's
and
one
you said
story right now. The second and third,
Potentially a
depending,
third.
yeah, possibly a third, but depends on what the construction is going to be on there.
Okay.
If it'd be possible or not. Because initial thought was I would demo it, but the cost of demo is quite a bit.
Mhm.
So I would rather not go that route.
I forgot what I was going to say. Gosh darn it. Right now,
Mhm.
it's all one building.
It's all one building.
Okay.
Yep, and it's 6 units in there. They're all 1-bedroom units in there.
How many, if, I know you're talking about having your own office space there, like where your personal office would be there?
My personal office,
Okay, and then how many more?
I might maybe one more, depending on
Okay.
what I can put on there.
Okay.
But yeah, that probably be, maybe I might rent it out just to help out with the rent and
Mhm.
stuff. That's it.
I just wondered how many
Yeah,
total we're
that's
looking at.
Yep.
Because,
Yeah.
you know, 2 is different than
Then
10,
but
20.
I think the limit on the RH currently is 5,000 square feet. Is
Okay.
what that is.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
so I can't go beyond that anyway.
Yeah.
So, yep.
And how many tenants?
Currently there are 6 tenants there.
How many?
Future tenants is gonna be most likely P6, might be 4, depending on, because I'm gonna keep the existing building, so it's gonna depend on what I can put on there.
And you
So it's probably
said how many?
4.
4 more?
No. 4,
So-
and then the office
So
space.
I do caution you to talk speculatively about a project that doesn't exist when we're talking about zoning. So you can't hold
Yeah,
them accountable for.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
anything
Oh,
he's
because
no.
I
saying
have
right
to
now,
talk to an
right? So-
architect and confirm
Right.
what is allowed, what is not
So
allowed. So
it's
I think
it's
it's-
totally fair for him to represent intent, but you can't hold him accountable to future actions if that's part of your
No.
decision-making process. Okay.
Oh, no, the reason why I was asking was just to kind of get an idea of what potentially could be there. You know, like you said, there isn't anything, you've talked to an architect, but there aren't any specific plans in place yet. So, you know, I just want to know how that would fit in.
yeah,
with your
because I think the architect talked to the staff,
Mhm.
and they said that before I could put in an application, this has to
happen. Okay.
happen before I could do that. Otherwise, I would have put in an application to get that done.
Okay.
So that's
Thank
where I'm
you.
at.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Hello. I'm Dennis Gillum, 3113 Northwood Drive. It's, see where Joy Circle is? I'm right in, kind of right in that area. Makes sense?
Where- Oh, Joy Circle.
Yep.
Up there.
So
Okay.
I'm directly across the street, basically, from there. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
somewhere in there. I just, I guess I wanted to point out parking. And, there's already people parking in front of this gentleman's house, about all the way down the street and on the lot itself. And all of them come through that main entry just as you turn off of Grand. It's literally from here to that wall where everybody turns in. With the Walmart traffic that already comes around our street and other commercial traffic that comes through there, plus adding more tenants in this building, plus adding some office people in this building, and who knows if he's going to have, 10 employees or people coming in and out all day or whatever, or the other person that he puts in does. Either way, there's going to be a lot more traffic. And right there's going to be accidents because it's literally that far before they turn in. So there's going to be people going 2 directions, turning in, bad traffic. It's a quick traffic light. It's pretty difficult there. I just wanted to point that out as part of the problems.
So you're concerned about the traffic?
I
That's the only
absolutely-
thing?
Well, no, I go along with everything that they've said already. Plus, I'm concerned about the traffic. Any questions for me?
No other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Judy Strand, and I live at 3132 Northwood Drive. And that is, if you go down the end of Grove, right in front of 3125, our house is directly at the end there. So we get right pretty much at the end of Grove. And I'd like to agree with pretty much everything that's been said so far. The concern we have too, as was just mentioned, was about turning in, because everyone who misses that turn comes and turns around in our driveway. And so there is a lot of extra traffic that goes around. And having just living right next door to the property that was just developed or is being developed at Mary Kay's, I can say that if the building that's there now is a 1-story, and if another story was added and possibly 3 stories, it would be really out of place in that neighborhood. And I think just create a lot of extra activity. And also the thing that we're concerned about is that while the gentleman at 3125 has a very low-key business perhaps for traffic, we don't know how long he will be there and what will happen after he leaves, or who he will sell that to, or if people will buy other properties in that area and develop them into larger businesses. And just one more thing is that I believe my husband holds the record for living in the neighborhood. I think 1955 moved in. So that's when his family moved in. So it is a long-standing neighborhood, and I think that adding businesses along that street would change it a lot.
My name is Larry Walters. I live at 3111 Grove, which is right in the area that is the subject here tonight. So I'm in favor of downzoning it to RM because I think the way it is now, it makes a nice transition. Got commercial on the west side. You got the road. Then you got mixed, not mixed use, but apartments, very few, half of them about. And then you got the residential. And I think there is, even with what we have now, I think we have a little bit of touch and go on parking on the street. I moved out there and bought a duplex, which is next door to my house, and moved in there in 1965. And then 74, I built the apartment, which is 3125 Grove. And at that time, I could have went 2 stories there, but seemed like the area was a basically ranch home, so I think I sacrificed 1 or 2 units by not going up 2 stories. But I wanted to keep the architecture similar to the deal, and I'm still in favor of that type of thinking. So I think it should be downzoned to RM, because I think it'll also affect a lot of the other streets off of Grove if it stays to high density. So I hope you vote to downzone the area. Thank you.
I have a quick question for you as well. Sorry.
Okay.
Before you go. So you have 3111, which is a couple of them, a couple properties south of Northwood. And is it like a duplex or apartment complex that you have? Because you said you have units there.
I live there in a single family dwelling.
Oh, okay.
I lived in the duplex right next to it before.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I built the apartment on the corner
The-
in 74.
You built 3125 and 74? Okay. Thank you. I was
And
just a little
I
confused.
do live at 3111, single family
And that's a
dwelling.
single family. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good evening. I'll be brief. I'm Leo Milliman at 3112 Northwood Drive, which is off the map on the right. And just for your information, that's a skunk river is in my backyard. I'm the president of the Northwood Association, so I want to just introduce myself. If you want to yell at somebody, you can. I'm the guy. And these are multiple neighbors. I presented to city council 2 or 3 times with Eloise meeting locally. So I've been through it. I won't go through everything that's already been said. Parking, I'm in favor of alternative 1 personally.
But number one, I want to compliment the staff for putting together this report. I read it and it's been shared with our neighborhood. I learned a lot just reading the process you went through. So why development might not be a good idea, parking space and the transition zone, it all makes sense to me. We're very proud of our neighborhood. We've organized a neighborhood association. They keep electing me president and don't pay me very well, like zero. So I just want to introduce myself and on behalf of the neighborhood. I've lived there, we have lived there, my wife and I, same old wife, only one I've ever had for about 45 years. So we like our neighborhood. I think you got the message. Thank you.
Go ahead. I'm just going to repeat what everybody else said.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something that comes up to me that I get phone calls and things like that. Just people don't know how to vent to the city. I used to be scared of all this, but I'm not anymore. We worry about what could happen down the road, not 3125 right now, but what happens in a year or two that could change the area of the neighborhood. And there's plenty of space on the other side for commercial development.
So I'm not done now. You wanted to come back.
No, go ahead.
So have you talked to the owner of 3125?
He's a nice fella. I just met him. When all this started 2 or 3 years ago, to keep it a neighborhood, it started with the Sherwin-Williams thing. And I don't know if you folks were on the P&Z at that time, but that awakened everybody. And we didn't know that that little area there was high density till the Sherwin-Williams thing came up. Excuse me. So, and we have a meeting at least once a year, sometimes 2 or 3 times in our neighborhood, picnics, backyard, block parties. And we just found out, at least I did as a neighborhood, that 3125 was bought and with an idea of development here 2 or 3 months ago. So, and I can't say your last name, but nice fellow, he's part of our neighborhood. So, but
have you talked to him
About this?
about
this? No, other than our presentation with Eloise at the Homewood Golf Course and what he said here. And I learned more of potential plans of his tonight than I had before, because I don't know when you purchased that property, but it's been relatively recently. Other questions from me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's try this. My name is Jim Zener, and
Stay at the mic, please, sir.
I live right there.
Stay at the mic, please.
At the bottom?
Yeah, I live on the corner of Duff and Kellogg.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I should say that I drive Grove every day. I mean, I'm on that street every day, and there's becoming more and more parking on the street. There's becoming more congestion. And the thing that bothers me is the fact that I don't mind driving 20 miles an hour down that street, but some people do. And I know there's kids in that neighborhood, and that's what scares me. Okay. I don't think we need that. I'm one of the newcomers in the neighborhood. We've been there almost 30 years. So, and moved there for the same reason everybody else did. It's a neighborhood. It's a great place. It's a perfect neighborhood. And I'm not going to repeat what everybody else said, but ditto. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Can you speak twice?
No, just the one time. Anybody else? Okay. Any other comments and questions up here then?
I have a question. Is that a school at Grand and Duff to the south?
Yes.
Elementary school, correct?
Preschool, isn't it?
Yeah, it was an elementary.
Okay, I'm trying to get my head as to where the school and everything was
At one time,
located
it
there.
was a school, now it's a preschool,
Okay, but still facility for children, so.
fenced in and.
Yeah, no, I know what it is. I just want to make sure that I was visually putting it in the right location.
Any other questions up here, city staff? Any other comments? Just hearing no other comments.
Close the public forum.
Oh, I forgot. I need to close the public forum. Thank you. I'm new at this. And I guess since there aren't any other questions up here, I would entertain a motion.
Oh, do I do that now?
I would do it.
I think I should recuse myself at this point from the vote.
Excuse me? Talking,
I'm sorry. I think I should recuse myself from this vote.
Based on,
I have a son and daughter-in-law who own a home on Grove Ave, fairly close to all of this. And I'm pretty well aware of what their opinion would be.
if you feel like that's biased towards your decision making, then yes, you should step aside, even if you don't have a financial interest in the property.
Yeah, no, I feel that would affect my vote.
Okay, then yeah, you should recuse yourself.
you got a question. I can see you got a question.
No, I'm trying to find the right page for the alternatives, so. No.
Page 3.
I asked all my questions. So are you looking for a motion at this
Yes.
point? Okay. I move that we recommend that the city council approve, alternative 1, that the city council approve the request to rezone all 8 parcels totaling approximately 3.2 acres located on the west side of Grove Avenue from RH residential high density to RM residential medium density.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
So this item will move on to the city council for a public hearing also as part of the rezoning process. That will not occur until June. There'll be a public hearing notice for the actual hearing date of June.
Thank you.
And you'll be letting this group of people know, or is it just going to be?
I will be sending public hearing notices to property owners. I don't know exactly who these people are.
Okay. Okay. Their neighborhood.
Okay.
So they say.
I can vouch for some of that.
Okay.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the zoning text amendment to review the CSC zoning district mid-block 20-foot setback standard along Lincoln Way.
Yeah, so Julie Gould is going to present that.
Oh.
Good evening. This will be quick, hopefully. This is a zoning text amendment to remove a requirement for a 20-foot wide mid-block break in the campus town service center zoning district. So this black outline area, that's everything within that boundary is zoned campus town service
I'm not
center,
gonna
CSC
speak, yeah.
zoning. That's mostly the commercial district. This would be Welch Avenue here, the Methodist Church, and then the newest building that has been constructed. So right now, the code requires that if any block or block face is redeveloped within this zoning district.
Julie, excuse me.
Who's going to the door?
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Can you repeat the last part of what you said at least?
If I can remember.
You said the last thing I heard was that there's a new building and then you pointed to where it
This is the
is.
newest building, the 2700 block that has been most recently redeveloped. It's been a couple years, but that was the most recent redevelopment.
Okay.
So right now, the zoning district has a requirement that as the blocks or block faces redevelop, there needs to be a 20 foot wide, approximately at the mid block point break. And that's really to make sure that there's access for traffic, pedestrians, utilities, all of the above kind of. Because as we've seen, some of the newer redevelopments are pretty large, solid facades. We have a developer that's looking at redeveloping 2516 Lincoln Way. So back in December of 2019, they had approached us with their site plan for review, and this 25 foot wide break was kind of causing some issues within their development plans. So staff took a look at what's been redeveloped, how it's been done, what the implications might be if that break isn't provided. And what we found was that at least along Lincoln Way, anything that's been a newer redevelopment, the break hasn't been provided, or it was there prior to redevelopment because maybe the whole block didn't redevelop, or they redeveloped at different times, so it didn't become an issue. So there's really no block. No break on 2700 block, on the 2400 block, and then there is on the 2300 block, but that's because they exist naturally. This is the church, and then these are the two large apartment complexes. And then, so really the only thing left to redevelop that faces Lincoln Way would be this 2500 block between Welch and Hayward, and then where the Methodist church is. So this block has a large outlot or alleyway. It's owned by the city. There's access onto Welch, and there's access onto Hayward over here. So when staff looked at it and reviewed it, we really thought that it wouldn't be an issue to get utilities to anything along this block face as it redevelops, or if things need improved. So the developer asked to do a text amendment to remove that requirement. Staff, like I said, reviewed it, thought it was okay for at least the Lincoln Way block faces. Now, so the text amendment is to remove that requirement along Lincoln Way. Any future redevelopment of any other blocks along Chamberlain, Welch, Hayward, Stanton, it would still be required. And so staff is recommending alternative 1 to eliminate that break along just the Lincoln Way block face.
As I understand, as I remember it, I remember a lot about Ames. Right now, that is a vacant lot.
Yes.
And
the aerial's a little fuzzy, sorry. Yeah, so it's that area right in there.
because they recently tore down the buildings. And if I remember correctly, there's always been the 20-foot access there, right?
No.
On one side of that property.
It's not 25 foot wide. There currently was a little passage along what that's that older building. I think Mr. Burrito is a tenant right now. It wasn't 25 foot wide, but there was
a passageway.
Yeah.
In fact, we used to drive our cars down it at one time, if I remember correctly. This is was when you were driving the big wheel, Kelly. But I've ran the neighborhood for years. But so there, until they tore down the buildings, there was some type of passageway, a walkway, or whatever you want to call it there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there's to the parking lot back there, there's entryway from on the west side and where the old Dairy Queen used to be.
Yeah, those two arrows are where
Yes.
there's existing access. This one on the west, why did it get so blurry? This one on the west side is one way from the interior of the block to the outside. So, but this one on the east side is wide. It is two-way traffic.
It's only one way that way?
This one, yes, is one way. It had became a result of the way that Hayward redeveloped 122 Hayward and that block.
Is there any chance that sometime in the future, okay, the city owns the outlots there in the middle of the block, which has been used for parking as long as I can remember. Is there a chance that at some point somebody wants to come in and redevelop, let's say, the south half of that block? Could that become an issue at some later date if somebody did want to do that and this is amenable to it?
No. Well, I mean, we can't predict the future, but this is only addressing this block face. So if this south half were to come in to be redeveloped, whether it was on Chamberlain or Welch or Hayward, that requirement is still in effect.
Okay.
And that's exactly why this is Lincoln Way only.
Yeah.
It's clear that most of these big blocks need this requirement.
Right. Okay.
It's really uniquely Lincoln Way where we don't want driveways anyways.
Yeah.
To try to do this. And Julie, we've gone through some planning exercises for Campus Town to talk about Lot X specifically, this middle area. When Welch was redesigned, we did some outreach and also in discussion of a Campus Town plaza at the intersection of Chamberlain and Welch. So we've spent quite a bit of time about pre-COVID, 2.5 years ago, kind of talking about long-term, what's still the evolution in Campus Town. And that's where we kind of got to these decision points as staff that we have comfort level where Lincoln Way is not a necessary access point, but utility quarters are still necessary. And long-term, how can Lot X function with the flow of traffic and pedestrians when other redevelopment occurs? So that's a little bit of background that helps support why staff is okay with this change. It was a much broader discussion of different projects that the city had looked at and different ideas.
The block where this blue square that you just drew
Yes.
is what is the block number?
2500 block, because that property, all those lots were combined probably back in 2019 or shortly after, and the address is 2516.
That's 2516, you say?
Yes.
And right now we're talking about there at one point was like a drive that kind of went there that was like 20 feet wide.
Well, I
Or
don't
was
know
it-
how wide it was.
or some kind of
I
So
can't
I would-
imagine a
some
car
kind of
passing
action.
there, but
Yeah, I would say it might be slightly overstated from the last 10 years.
Okay.
So if you look on Street View or other aerials that we don't have, it was I would call it an informal gap between buildings because since I've been here, it was actually fenced.
Okay. Yeah.
In
Really?
the past, it was open, and
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying people haven't gone back and forth, but you can see in different older photographs that
You remember it.
there was a fence. I mean, there was a gap. People went through there.
Is
Whether
there
they
any other
whether they
accessibility?
squeezed through a hole in the fence or whatever people did, but it was
There's-
not a formal passageway.
yeah, and there's a couple of those still on this block. I don't know if they were fenced off the last time I noticed, but there was one up in this area too.
Wait, where?
Wrong
Yeah,
way.
down by
Down here, because
Like-
that one's gated. Maybe it's right here.
Size Roost or
See-
whatever it was.
Because maybe that one's. I think that one's gated. I think you can get through pedestrian wise. You can get through in this area.
Okay, so because here's my question is, so we've got this lot X, which is in the middle. And then is there any like pedestrian accessibility then if we get rid of this to the Lincoln Way side?
No, it'll all be down the sidewalks of Welch or Hayward.
Or through.
Because
the-
I'm just
or through
thinking,
the-
That's
Pedestrian
very
access.
similar to.
yeah, I'm asking
what
about
it-
pedestrian,
yeah.
not.
But that's very similar to the next block over, which is Kingland.
Mhm.
This is the Cranford building. I mean, there is a gap between the buildings, but it's not paved.
But that's one big building, like the CVS.
You can't get
building.
through there.
Yeah, and they have things
On
in there.
Lincoln Way,
Okay.
can't go
You can't get through that. Yeah.
They butt up against each other.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
This
you-
is a solid wall. There's
The Gilbane building, sort of.
kind of through here.
But there would still be pedestrian access on the Lincoln Way side and probably on the back side also.
To that parking lot?
Oh,
No.
no, to the commercial buildings is what I'm saying, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I know you can park in the front if you can find a parking spot. But then since Welch switched and now you no longer have parking along that road, along Welch, a lot of time, I mean, this isn't going to necessarily impact my decision on it, but I'm just pointing out a fact that if there isn't any, because there are a lot of businesses right on this section that you're talking about, and if there isn't any way for like a pedestrian to get straight to Lincoln Way when there isn't parking on Lincoln Way.
There's parking on Lincoln Way.
No, I mean like if it's all filled up, because it's usually filled up because it's across the street from the university. I guess my concern is being disabled myself. That is a long walk to have to go around to get to Lincoln Way.
Not okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And I know this is about utility
don't know where
accessibility,
they're
but
there are I'm not saying it solves the problem, but there were ADA stalls on some of the corners.
yeah, there are a couple because
But
I park in them.
Uh,
So. But
The passageway that was there was not a.
not a pedestrian thing
No,
anyway.
not, it,
Okay.
no.
it's
And-
hard to
and-
take, it's hard for me to remember exactly what it was. I just remember it was there, but it's not
It
a.
was, it had no easement or formal right of access to it. I think it
Okay.
was
There,
just
that's what I was looking for.
used. Yes.
So
I
it
was
didn't
just-
have to be ADA
It wasn't even a sidewalk.
acceptable or even paved.
Right. And it wasn't. So,
It was
yeah.
paved.
So what's interesting here is that the standard requires the break, but it does not require letting anybody cross somebody's property.
So this is also property that is owned by somebody that where we were talking about
Yes.
this break. Okay.
Yeah.
And like I
So-
said, what I was saying wasn't that. I just
In
sometimes
fact,
I feel like people
what's-
forget that.
Yes.
You
In
know,
fact, what's
yeah,
kind of
you
back
can't
there
walk.
now
It's
is-
hard.
In fact, what's kind of back there now is the dumpsters.
So the break, if the text amendment wasn't approved, the break could still be there, but it wouldn't necessarily. It would still be private.
And not for
y'all,
pedestrians.
and
Yeah.
they may not
It would be
have
yeah.
that easement.
Yeah, it'd be up to the landowner whether they want to recognize that they have a parking field behind them and encourage people to flow through their property or not to Lincoln Way.
And the fact they could gate it
They could.
even.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely understand that. I think I just was thinking as a development thing in general, it seems like we're forgetting about disabled people and how difficult it is to get around. Because a lot of times we park in that parking lot, as in myself and my children, and then my children are the ones who have to go all the way around to a store because I physically cannot walk there. So, and I know that there's parking on Lincoln Way, in theory, but then a lot of times it's taken up. And I know that's at this point, that is a moot point. That's beside the point. I just wanted to bring it up just because sometimes I feel like that's not brought up is the accessibility, but knowing it's private property anyway, and this, I know it's for utility and it wouldn't have access for pedestrians anyway. I'm on that page of things. I just wanted to bring that point up. Okay.
Any other questions?
Public,
Oh, yes, public forum would be next
public on this item.
on this, on this particular item. Seeing nobody in the audience, so move on.
Good job.
Any other questions for, assume the city is the applicant on this one also?
Yes, it started out with a letter from the property owner to city council, and then council referred it back to staff to move forward with it.
And this is that empty lot that's like near Mr. Burrito.
Yeah,
That
it's
kind of
right
looks
next door.
dangerous in
Just,
a way.
just
So,
down,
no,
just
yeah.
down Cafe.
The
Yeah,
buildings were
yeah.
like half demolished for a while.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
completely gone. That's
Yeah.
the location. Yes.
Mhm.
Buildings were falling down.
Okay.
Okay.
There aren't any other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I have a motion.
Ooh.
I have alternative number 4.
Oh.
Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of a proposed text amendment to table 29803 to eliminate a mid-block break along 2500 Lincoln Way block faces.
Alternative
You want it tabled?
No,
No, oh, he's.
no, I'm
reading
reading,
the table.
I'm reading the alternative number one, but only on the 2500 block.
Oh, okay. So you're
Of-
you're amending alternative one to include, to be only for this
The
block face
2500 block of Lincoln Way.
and not all of Lincoln Way.
Correct.
Okay. I'll second that motion. Can we do that?
Yeah.
You can second whatever you want. I'm just pointing out three.
No, you're giving a look like
He's-
maybe what he said we couldn't do.
I'm just looking
so-
at four.
He's frowning at me.
I know.
I'm just looking at the map where three of, there's only one block left that doesn't
Yeah.
already have Lincoln Way dealt with.
Yes.
Are there any other implications? It's just this address, correct?
The Methodist Church block is
Okay.
the 2600 block is the only block that's not currently, redeveloped basically already on Lincoln Way to see how that standard works or doesn't work.
Motion in a second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Is there any
Yeah, I
further
did second
discussion?
No, we got to vote on it now.
I know.
Just making sure, because we had some confusion about
Yeah.
what we were
Yeah.
proposing.
Okay.
Does the city understand
So the motion is to only eliminate the mid-block crossing,
Mid-block
sorry,
break.
mid-block break,
2500 block only.
2500 block?
Okay, we have a motion
2500
and a
block
second.
face of Lincoln
And
Way.
we've had discussion.
So alternative one, instead of saying eliminate a mid-block break along Lincoln Way block faces, it should say a mid-block break along the 2500 block face of Lincoln Way.
Yes.
Yes.
Or close enough, probably.
And then if there's only one left, then we can review that at that time,
Yes.
if they redevelop it.
Yes.
Okay, everybody understand it then? Okay.
Yeah, just making sure.
All those in
Oh,
favor
we
of
got
the
a question,
motion?
Wait,
What?
go
I
ahead.
was just wondering what the difference is between the one and the two, being as all of the reasoning would be the same. It's
I guess two does say we can all.
Alternative language for the
Oh.
proposed text amendment.
because we're only talking 2 blocks here, correct?
We're talking one block. I'm talking one. block.
Right, you are. But
But
There's
No,
only
we-
two
right.
blocks that.
Otherwise, you're talking about that whole outlined area along Lincoln Way.
Well, this is new, so it probably will not
There's-
redevelop anytime soon because this has only been there for not even 5 years, maybe.
Unless something
Kingland
happens.
is
to the
fairly
property.
new. The Cranford building is historic, so I don't assume that won't go anywhere. These two buildings are within the last 10 to 15 years, and then this is another church. So everything here, except for these two block faces, is fairly new in the world of development. And
Although we
being
just-
torn down and
Although we just saw in the previous one, that's 20 and 40 years later that the zoning,
Right.
it became an issue. So I think it's good to clarify.
I just want to clarify, our position is staff, which includes
Uh-huh.
Ames Electric, Engineering Division, the planning staff, and the traffic staff, we would not ask for a break anywhere on Lincoln Way.
Oh,
That is staff's position. It is an unnecessary standard. It's only on the side streets or the rear where we have concerns as staff. The Methodist property is huge. I'm not sure how or if it would ever redevelop. So the other things might happen there that don't happen on these other blocks because it's such a large property. But city staff across the board is not expecting, doesn't mean you can't have a driveway on Lincoln Way, but we're not requiring driveways on Lincoln Way. So as you can see on these other
This isn't
sites,
for driveway anyway, it's for
it can be
an
the way.
access.
Well, the way it's written, it could be for a driveway
Okay.
to meet the standard.
Mm.
So that's,
so you're trying to eliminate that language altogether on Lincoln Way? Like that there would be potential for access for a driveway?
No.
we're
Or
trying,
just-
no, what
We said driveway.
what we're trying to say is it's not mandatory that you have a driveway on Lincoln Way. The way
Yeah.
the way the break standard is written,
Not
it could be for
mandatory.
utilities, it could be for a driveway, but you must provide it.
Yes.
And we don't really
And now
want,
we're saying not.
and we don't really want driveways on Lincoln
Yes.
Way, regardless of
I just
of the
repeated
break
what you
standard or
said
not.
incorrectly, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically for all the previous development that's happened, you've essentially had to make an exception.
So we
and
made it in.
Trying to write it into the code.
So what happened? Yeah. So the interpretation had been 2 of these projects were approved by council. One of the blocks was approved by staff. It was viewed as necessary, kind of a built-in interpretation. Well, when we got to this block where it's how many properties are on this block face? Like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
When we got to this block face, there's so many properties, they're very small. It was kind of a different situation. So staff wasn't really able to apply that same necessary interpretation when no one person controls the block. And you don't know what the needs are for the block. When Kingland redevelops, you know exactly how that building is going to be served. You knew exactly how the Union building was going to be done. This block face is diverse. So staff wasn't able to or willing to make that same application to the benefit of 2516 and say, oh, don't worry about it. I couldn't do that. So that's what motivated them to ask city council for clarification.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, does your thing still stand then? Your
My motion.
Yes. Okay.
My alternative stands.
Okay. I just want to make sure my second stands.
Okay.
Is there any benefit to reconsider and just do alternative 1 as it's stated, or do we still like just that address? Given that
We're not doing that, just that address.
You'd have to vote.
Block.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to vote on the motion. If the motion passes, it's done. If it fails, then a new motion would come to the table.
Okay.
So I don't think anybody would retract their
Gotcha.
motion at this point.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Nay.
Yay.
Nay.
Okay, the motion fails.
Okay.
Do we have another motion?
Can I do it? Even
Sure.
though okay. So then I move that alternative 1, the Planning and Zoning Commission can recommend approval of the proposed text amendment to table 29.8033 to eliminate a mid-block break along Lincoln Way block faces, just as is.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes. Item 8 is review of bylaws.
Oh, those are the minutes. Yay. Do we have to read them out loud or something?
No.
Oh,
You don't have, so you don't have to do anything. So
Okay.
it's just a standing order. I think it's in the bylaws that
Yes.
says in May,
Yes.
the P and Z will review the
We'll
bylaws.
review that.
Oh, yeah,
So-
I just
so-
want to make sure, did we have to read
So-
through them at this meeting
You
as
don't
well?
have, if you do, you don't have to take any action. It doesn't have to be any motions. There's only a motion if someone wants to propose a change and bring it back to
Okay.
another meeting.
Did,
I don't have to change.
are the terms always goes to March 31st?
As far as I know, yeah, I think that's the standard.
Okay, then I think it'd be better to have the elections officers take place at first meeting in May, because the new people didn't know anything about doing anything for.
So I first thought of that as well, but there's the situation where you might have no officers at the first meeting.
Well, if you change it so that.
Oh, sure.
But at the first meeting in April, let's say that the
being-
chair and the vice chair both go off the commission at the same time. Now you have no officers at the first meeting in April.
You mean in May?
In April.
Oh, in April.
So
Sorry.
every,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So I thought the same thing. It'd be better to have your feet under you, but then at the same time, there's the possibility that no officers are present. You need to have officers to run a meeting, so you would have to do something anyways.
So we need to do something, I think we need to do something a little different, because like I say, they didn't have their feet underneath them even when they came here and they voted on.
But
Yeah.
then you have the opposite situation though, where we had three people leave the committee in April, and I don't know if they're making changes to this, it's not like they're doing it for other people that won't even be here. I mean, they won't even be here for the changes that they're potentially wanting to make to this, which
Right.
might not fit with
But
what
I-
our new committee wants to do, our current committee.
But again, I say that the new people didn't even have their feet underneath them. They didn't know that there was going to be an election, or they didn't get to know anybody else.
Okay,
And,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Maybe after the first time they've gotten to know anybody, then maybe they demand that you be the,
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And
Would there be any benefit to having the election before you have the switch over in people?
No.
because then
Well,
the new people don't.
it's kind of, I guess my thought is that's a little unfair because now you're cementing in people and the
Right.
people that voted for him might not even be on the board anymore.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's any different than if you don't know anybody either.
Yeah.
If you want to change that date and I'd have to look into that. I'm not sure. I can't tell you tonight that there's any code or
Okay.
rule or standard that would also apply that says you can't change it just because I don't know.
Maybe it's the best of all the
You could
awkward situations. I don't want to say bad options, but
So
awkward
You
options.
could make, you could also, in that section, that if there is lack of any officers present at the meeting, that the senior person on the commission preside over the meeting.
Although if I were new,
Or
I'd
at least
just vote
do an
for somebody who's
election.
already here, so.
Yes, over the election.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it fair to
Everybody,
the new
Yeah.
people.
yeah,
You know, the old people, you don't want to have them ram through something that,
exactly, yeah. That's what I was trying to say, is that then the new people wouldn't.
or am I making a problem out of nothing?
I don't know. I mean,
Well, this year we had very few people that veterans that would have been
it was a unique.
eligible, and it wouldn't be right to, it was Mike and
them.
Mike's, and you
We
were
don't
doing
have
Mike
that
and
level.
Mike's first meeting, and
We don't have
Right,
that
you're-
level of change
you're the
most
chair.
years. What happened this year is
You
not what happens most years.
yeah, okay.
I don't remember the schedule of how many people go in any one year right now, but this was just not typical.
I think every.
No.
They're staggered
Two of them.
Are they staggered terms?
to some degree, yeah. But one year has more than others.
Gotcha.
It just make a lot of people.
I think it's three.
Well,
This year
I
this
too,
think it's
so-
three,
we
two,
were short-
two.
We were short one to begin with.
Yeah,
this
it
year,
was. Yeah, I think it goes 3-2-2.
Okay.
I think that's what it is.
And then we
for
lost one
terms.
after then, so.
Yeah. So then that got filled and we lost, and then you had right. You had someone resign one after that. Yeah, it was. I don't know, John, if it's
Been a
a
weird year.
if it's a big deal or not.
Just seem to impact this year.
Yeah, this year,
Yeah,
I'm like I say, maybe I'm making a problem out of nothing, but I'd like to be, for the
Because we
new
had
members.
four.
at least
How often
discuss
do they-
it.
How often do they change? I mean, I mean,
Every year, the
We-
chair and the.
Somebody's term expires every year.
no, I mean the bylaws. How often
Whenever you choose to change them.
does it happen? Very often is my question.
It's happened once since I've been here where 2 years ago, we changed something about Zoom meetings and
Yes.
online
Right here is the-
online
For
delivery.
COVID.
yeah, well, yeah,
Something
here's
about
the list
that.
of the dates and
Gotcha.
yeah, besides the
So maybe
2 years ago, yeah. But
Oh, and then 11
2009
years
was-
before
Yeah,
that.
2009 was the last one, so,
COVID did.
Yeah, that's what we're saying with the
Nasty on
Zoom,
us.
yeah.
yeah. And we had to-
So I'm
yeah,
just
we had to
wondering
change
if
it so we
if
could
it's
have
not-
Zoom calls.
A problem, why make a problem?
You ought to kick this down the road 1 month?
Or maybe 1 year?
1 year.
We'll be back, yeah, we have to do that again next year anyway, so.
I mean, if you have a repeat of this year, then it might be a problem.
You never
You
know
see what
when
I
you're
mean?
gonna have that problem. It's,
Yeah,
if people don't want to do it, okay. But I just like to be
prepared.
fair to the new people.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
You know, it's kind of hard to, you guys came on and the first thing we did was elect officers. And who are you? And who are you? Who am I? And you didn't want it.
Well, because I'm moving. I did want it. But it's hard to do that when I live in Tucson, Arizona. Apparently that's not allowed, said Kelly.
No, you gotta be an Ames resident.
Pretty sure you gotta live in the city.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Then
Let's just leave it.
do we want to just leave it for now, or do we want to put it on the agenda again next
we
time?
can,
And
we
if
can make a
anybody-
change to the bylaws at any time, right?
You can ask to put it on an agenda for discussion at any time,
Okay,
right?
okay,
It's
okay.
just that
Well,
it's a
let's not worry
standing
about it.
rule that at
Let's
this
get it.
meeting, you automatically look at it. Doesn't say you can't in August say, hey, I'd like to talk about bylaws again.
Okay, yeah, since we don't have anything concrete to change right now.
Just something
let's
for
just
everybody
let
to
it
think
go.
about.
Okay,
Yeah.
next item on the agenda is commission comments. Does anybody on the commission have any comments or anything to say
Other than that.
other than that? Yeah.
Apologize for being late. It's been one of those days.
I guess you weren't the only one. I made it here by the skin of my teeth a couple minutes
Well, in
late. So.
fact, we waited for one of you to get here.
My
We
daughter
didn't
got
have a
off work
quorum
40
before
minutes
that.
late, so.
Okay, any staff comments?
I'm just looking at the bylaws that I don't know if we make a big deal about it. It has an order to an agenda.
Right.
I don't strictly follow that.
What?
I kind of try to gauge what's like maybe the more popular item and put that first rather than last. So typically we follow that order with current planning first, because that's usually what's going to drive the public comment, and then other items after that. But as long as you're not going to give me some kind of negative feedback for not following the bylaw agenda, I don't think we need to change it.
By golly, I think I.
Well, now that I know,
Just because I
Next
can.
agenda.
What are the ethics?
I didn't know
involved in
before
this?
today, but now that I know, I don't know.
Is anything
Yeah, that
coming
seems
up?
fine.
Because believe it or not, every once in a while, we have nothing to do. And he cancels the meeting.
It hasn't happened for a while. Ask
I know.
Eileen's very disappointed in that.
January, I think.
Yeah, we had.
We got to run for a couple of months, but your next meeting's in June,
Mhm.
right?
No.
No.
No, we have a
One
meeting in
more,
2 weeks.
one more May meeting.
Yeah, we'll have items on the next meeting,
Okay.
and then maybe not in
It
June.
is
We'll
May,
see.
isn't it? I forgot again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's going so fast.
Yeah, I anticipate having items for your next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
And still nothing happening down there across from Menards.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I get asked about that all the time now.
Oh, were they plowing it all?
When they're going to build the Olive Garden.
All right, I have one last thing. Housekeeping.
Okay.
Bylaws reference the land use policy plan. We don't have a land use policy plan anymore. It should just be changed to the comprehensive plan.
Oh, the 2040 comprehensive
wording.
plan.
It should
Okay.
just say comprehensive plan. That way the title never matters again.
Oh, smart. Okay, gotcha.
So
Yeah,
I would say from a housekeeping measure under your standing rules, you
Mhm.
have one that you review the plan every 5 years. That's also in the implementation chapter, but we should probably just change it to comp plan.
sounds good.
If someone wants to make that
Under
motion.
section,
I'll make that
Article
motion.
7, Section 2.
I'll second that.
It might be in there more than once. I
He
was
doesn't have
looking
a-
at,
He doesn't have a motion.
I can't make a
Oh.
motion. I was
You
looking
made a
under,
motion.
We already have we have a motion and a second over here.
okay.
To do that. Yeah.
What is the motion?
To change the language
To-
from the comprehensive plan to the,
From the land.
Land
Land
use
use
plan
plan to
to
comprehensive
comprehensive
plan.
plan. Yeah. And I second that.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
Those opposed say nay.
And then it has to be done again at the next meeting.
We have to draft it and give it to you to approve.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else for the good of the commission? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
You're adjourned.